and welcome to Uzreport World interview. My name is Barno Nazarzoda, and joining us today, President of DiaPrep System Incorporated, retired Regional Program Director at U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Senior Scientist, accomplished public health executive with extensive high-level experience in developing public health programs in the area of viral hepatitis, HIV, TB, infection diseases, surveillance, diagnostics, improvement of laboratory management systems in many developing countries throughout Asia and Africa. Professor Michael Favorov, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Professor, your recent participation in the press conference devoted to the situation around the outbreak of COVID-19 in the world and possible spread of this type of virus in Uzbekistan has drawn a huge attention among our citizens, especially your opinion about bats in Chinese bazaars and markets that are considered to be initial virus carriers. Can you please briefly and schematically explain how that could happen?
What we mean, exactly what we have right now is the outbreak, which is very specific for the number of the diseases known as zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic, it means that transmission actually initiated from some of the species which is not human, and the cross-species transfer from the animal to the human. The virus is looking for the new host to extend the virus living. I mean, of course, that's a kind of, very schematic, but nevertheless, that's important to understand. What we have is a trans-species transfer from one species to another, and it's going on right now. The bats are known to be kind of source for many zoonotic infections. Ebola actually came from bat. The SARS, that was a similar outbreak of severe pneumonic syndrome in 2003-2004. That was again the bat, the origin of it. It's kind of not a very kind of unusual thing. That's the bats are known for that. And now what I can tell that the reason of this because of the popularity of that species as a bat in China. They believe that many part of the bats are maybe used as a medicine. They believe that part of the bat is very useful for your health, and even more, they use it as a bat soup, which is even advertised as a Chinese specific dishes, and very attractive for not only for Chinese themselves but for the tourists. And as a result of it, I don't want to speculate how it happens. I know that the first cases were identified around that exotic bazaar in Wuhan. And it's a lot of theories how the first bats actually get there, but I think it's not the subject of our interview. Nevertheless, the people who contact the bats start transferring the virus. And very important to understand that the sequence analysis now is available, which is even show that all these cases we have for entire world actually originated from one particular bat, from one particular animal which were purchased and used, and the first people were actually infected. So we can say that the bat's origin, we have a direct evidence for that as a sequence analysis of the virus.
A couple of days ago, China, with its top leader, officially celebrated the victory in stopping the outbreak of the COVID-19. What does it literally mean in terms of medical achievement?
That's again a very complex issue. You really asked a question which is probably can be like a separate book describing the outbreak. Was really difficult to contain. That was a huge outbreak. Was the mortality altogether that's more than 3,000 people die, and it's really significant issue. And the stadiums were converted into the hospitals because so many patients. There are the big space covered were converted for the quarantine for the people who contacted but not sick yet, to prevent them to become sick and moving around and infect other people. Exactly, the spread of the disease. And that's in terms of that type of outbreak, that issue is resolved. Drastic quarantine measures in China bring the mobilized the society, and a very highly disciplined society, I would say, really locked the outbreak, particularly in one city, and in that city, the prevention of contacts, prevention of spreading of infection were done in a really dramatic way and showed the result. So we can say now that the outbreak is really close to the end. Nevertheless, it was still 8 cases of death today, and it's still 1,433 cases of severe disease even today. It means it's still enough people are suffering of the severe disease, and it might be the death for a few more days. I mean, in terms of outbreak in China, it's probably not an issue anymore. It now has become narrow to the one particular city where it's originated, and of course where the infection was very broadly spread around other people. Yes.
I see. Then, in terms of social and economic scale, does it mean that China has destroyed and got rid of those exotic markets where they sell those kind of exotic animals? Because it's an issue of sanitary.
Yeah, I understand your question. It's I only can say that it's a sovereign nation, and they probably have to think about it. And I really advise them to do something about it, because that in 2003 and 4 we have 1,000 deaths and 8,000 cases. It was not enough to alarm the Chinese government that something is going wrong. They really have to find out, with such a high population, with such a high density, that's what actually happens, that the new viruses is always find the target. And I mean, yes, I mean, that will be a lot of scientifically based investigation on that case, and I hope that some measure will be taken.
Coming back to the press conference held in Tashkent recently, it follows no need to panic. But yesterday, the World Health Organization declared, the day before yesterday, the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a pandemic. And each message by this organization sounds really alarming for us. What does it mean? What exactly should be the reason to call a disease a pandemic case? Is its power, its scale, or the absence of the treatment, including vaccine?
We have to understand that definition is number one. What you call the pandemic. If you take that Wikipedia, or I mean something simple source, and ask what the pandemic means, you will have the clear definition of pandemic. And in very common definition, it's yes, it's a significant, it's widespread, many countries involved, we all have that, and nevertheless, in some countries, in some part of the world, it might be quite different in terms of level of the disease. And it means right now we have, going down terrible outbreak in China, we have going down outbreak in Korea, but we have rising up outbreaks in Europe and probably in United States based on number of new cases. WHO was very cautious, I would say, in terms of declaring the pandemic. They were really waiting for if that might be kind of limited by China, or few cases of the tourists coming from China. I mean, that was, I was fully agree with that. And I was fully agree when they declared the pandemic, because that's to give government the different tools, the different understanding. Understanding is very important. In the same time, it's a very interesting for me to see how that pandemic, right, which is supposed to be all over the world, supposed to be not really significantly affect in terms of number of patients, significantly in fact the Mongolia-Turk world. Yeah, that's very interesting, and we discussed it during the conference, and I think it still does not mean that we do not have a pandemic. It's a still pandemic because,
excluding those Mongolian.
well, for now, because that means that sooner or later we will be, somehow involved. But so far, I just spent 10 days working with the Minister of Health and with the Minister of Health staff. We've done everything we could to evaluate all the suspicious cases and all cases possible. But I can tell you, with all the experience I have, we have no case of coronavirus in Uzbekistan. The vaccine is a very urgent need for the vaccine because, as you know, that outbreak is ongoing in Italy. It's rising up in other countries, including the United States. Significant funds were kind of devoted to the outbreak control, which by President Trump, that was more than $8 billion. And the certain portion of that money will be going to the scientists like NIH in the United States to develop the vaccine and implement it. It's a whole, the vaccine by itself, it's a relatively, quite possible things to develop, the prototype. I mean, yeah, the modern molecular biology technique allowed you to develop that, relatively easy, the prototype, the protein, which might be a vaccine. And that start all the necessary steps, which take time. The first step will be the try on the animals, that if, the responses exist. Then try on the volunteers, that it's not kind of, affect the healthy people and it's not affect their health. And then finally, that will be very important, we have to have a group of people at risk, and some will get the vaccine, some will get the different type of vaccine, not the coronavirus. And if the vaccine for coronavirus will prevent the disease, that will be named as a vaccine. Then we have to do the production. The production is another story, and everybody understands that. And Dr. Fauci, he really said that that will take about a year, maybe more. I think before it's become available widely, for Uzbekistan or for Central Asia countries, that will take at least 2 years.
2 years. So the next question is about some viruses have so-called recurrence or some cyclic appearance and can come back within several years, right? When and what should we expect next then?
That's two answers to that. Number one, that yes, all the pathogen, they have a natural cycle. It might be regulated by interaction with human, because if the pathogen infect everybody have immunity and the pathogen is gone. Yes. But at the same time, we know that the viruses like influenza, like any respiratory disease similar to coronavirus, the transmission, they actually appear in a season. And it's our prey that what we have here in these countries of Mongolia, Central Asia, and Turkey is actually show that we in the early spring, but it's already that kind of last few weeks of the season of the flu, and that's why we still do not have disease. And we hope that this cycle, the year cycle, seasonality cycle, actually will give us the time for be prepared for the next season, which starts in November.
And we may not face it during spring, but we may face it during autumn.
November, when the influenza coming, when you have all the running nose and everything, mm-hmm. It might come back if the source will be still available. It's very difficult to answer. It's many speculation on that, but I actually working right now with the Institute of Virology. We're working on building up the model for Uzbekistan in terms of number of cases of respiratory disease per week for, let's say, for last year, for this year, and then we will see the trend, and we hope that we will have some indirect evidence that might be the case, why we don't have a disease in Central Asian countries, just because the season of respiratory disease is over.
You and Minister of Health of Uzbekistan have declared that there is no coronavirus cases detected in Uzbekistan. What could be the reason for that? You've just already said. And how should the government behave?
I would tell you that the system was built, the public health system was built pretty much during Soviet time. It was very similar with Chinese system. I even can say that Chinese system of public health was built based on the Soviet system of public health. System was not very flexible, but very strong. If something happens, that system is, as rusty as it is still working. And I think it's one of the reasons. Look, when I came here, I was tested at least 3 times before they let me into the country. They test me in airplane, inside, they test me outside of the way, and outside of the way of airport. Yeah, I understand the efficiency that they probably will not find a lot of cases, but what I think that somebody in Italy wants to see the Samarkand, the beautiful city, the treasure city of the world, but having the light fever, he will say, nah, they will test me, they will put me in quarantine. I will recover first and then go to Samarkand. That, I think, that's a very good system of prevention of people infected to go around and spread the disease in other countries.
Yeah, that's true. My last question, Professor, is about the plant called ISRIC. You've mentioned and highly praised its the disinfection abilities even in coronavirus preventing and fighting. Were you serious about this?
You know what happens? Actually, I showed the minister that himself. I showed him the map, and I asked his opinion. How do we can explain it? That is something, because what I want to find what the specific of that we can share with other countries. And of course, a lot of people propose different ideas, and the minister that Alisher Kayumovich, he said, that Avicenna, that was the source of it, mentioned that if you use this the grass for for the treatment of inside and treatment of patient, that is actually working. I checked, yes, that grass in Mongolia, in all Central Asian, even in Turkey they use it the same way. I understand, it's not a scientifically based opinion, but it shows you the mind of people who are thinking of reason, try to find the case. It might be not the grass, but somebody else, probably smarter than we are, will find a real explanation for that. So I think it's nothing wrong to use something which the population used for last 1,000 years. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the conclusion is that we should stay positive. How can you conclude? I mean, your forecasts.
That's only what I can say, but it doesn't mean, I just understand all these jokes and nice words. It doesn't mean that somehow the few cases get in and start to spread the disease. We have to be not to let it happen. We have to still work very hard. We still have to check each person coming to the country like it's going on right now. We still, all the prevention measures which our Ministry of Health are doing, we reevaluated, we went through that several times. We developed a new the proposal to how to continue. Because, after some time people get tired of doing this, nothing happens. This is what's so dangerous now. Keep doing what you're doing, and we will really appreciate for the job the Ministry of Health is doing.
Thank you very much for the very honest and informative dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Thank you.